Hi, welcome to the Footballers Football Show. I'm Scott Allan, and joining me today is Dylan Easton, Raith Rovers Player of the Year. Dylan, obviously delighted to have you on. Take us back, obviously growing up in Niddrie. Obviously we've heard lots of stories. I lived in Edinburgh at the time and heard that it was quite a tough upbringing for boys coming through football. But how did, obviously growing up in a place like that, impact your football career as a child?
Aye, it did. Probably one of the people that you speak to probably say the same, that to come out in Niddrie and become a footballer, you seem to do well. But no, it was obviously a tough upbringing. Like I said, football was of everything that I ever done, ever dreamt of being a footballer, and it kind of took your mind off it, going out playing with your pals. I've got obviously older brothers, older cousins and stuff that used to take us down the park, play football, jumpers and stuff, and it was our way sort of avoiding all the trouble that used to go on at Niddrie. So yeah, it was difficult, but it was all we ever bred, playing football.
Because obviously your style of play, a proper footballer, in my eyes, really technical. Do you think that was a lot, obviously playing on the street, on the concrete, all the sort of games that I probably played myself as a kid as well?
Aye, it was, and like you said, it's just probably grown up watching footballers as well. I think it's probably taken the game a wee bit now, especially younger ones. Yeah. Too many computer games and that. But no, it was just always football. Your mum and your dad used to shout you in for your tea, didn't want to go in, used to miss it. But growing up, I just having these older brothers and cousins and realised that the things I used to do against them, they were 2, 3, 4 years older than me. I used to think, I could be a good footballer if I just stuck at it. But no, it was like you say, you probably didn't as well. It was just all about learning all the time and playing grassroots football, these things.
And obviously having brothers, it does impact you, because you need to take a few kicks here or there, and then that obviously stands you in good stead when you go to your own age group. And one of your first boys club, Hutchie Vale as well, obviously a real famous boys club, obviously coming out of Edinburgh, lots of names for many a team I've obviously played with him. Was that a place that you remember fondly?
Aye, it was. Obviously I started at younger than that, was a diner. Had a lot of success there. Getting a lot of sort of Scottish Cup finals, competing for leagues, and like academies and that one their thing back then. So it was kind of, you played right to your under 13s, 14s, even 15s. And then also moving on to Hutchie, like you said, it was the kind of team that you wanted to play for, to get scouted, to get all these teams looking at you. And we had a really good team at the time. And like you said, it was just from then on, that's when, like it's under 15s maybe, I wanted to then be a footballer and wanted to be part of that success that Hutchie was. And luckily enough, we went on to go and win some trophies and stuff. And yeah, I managed to do well after that. And
obviously you obviously went on to Livingston from there. How was it going from obviously the grassroots boys club set up into Livingston? Because Livingston as well at that time were bringing through players who were then going on to play in the first team.
Aye, it was, and like I said, it's something that I always wanted to be, was a footballer. And when you get to that age, it's as soon as you know there's people interested in you, just want, as soon as I left school, it's just what I wanted to be, was a footballer. Then the opportunity came, at Livingston, going in that full-time environment, a bit different from what it is now. But I loved every minute of it, and worked under really good managers, good players as well, that went on to have really good careers. So yeah, it was sort of the stepping stone of my career, which I enjoyed.
And players and coaches at Livingston, any familiar names that would stick out to us?
Aye, well obviously the Mark McNulty's, Stephen Scoogles and these guys that went on to have really good careers, obviously going down south and stuff. So I was a young boy there, looking up to these guys, especially more Stephen Scoogle. I think the player that he was at the time in the position he played, that when Yogi, John Hughes and John Collins came in, they came in and started playing a nice style of football, and that's where I wanted to see myself, as trying to replicate what Scoogle was doing, because I knew there was a lot of interest at the time for him. So it was a case of I wanted to take his place, I wanted to find myself in the team. And yeah, it was so enjoyable. I loved it. Playing on a Yogi, it was a bit mental at times, but
any good stories with you and Yogi, or Yogi just about the place?
Loads of stories. You probably heard that there was times he'd come in the morning. Obviously, young boys would be in early. He'd come in, lights would be switched off, big sweeping brush, swinging around in the changing room. He'd get you in the boot room, have a laugh with you, box you up and toughen you up. But it's probably what missing's in the game now. A lot of that, and that's something that sort of sticks with you forever.
Yeah, I think the sides of a manager is actually something that makes you feel at ease. Obviously now everything's far more structured than it was back then. But in terms of on the training pitch, you obviously speak about the style of play that he played, did you feel that was going to be a club that was suited to you?
Aye, totally. Like I said before, he was kind of the first manager that I played under that had that sort of tens, stand still. You could hear him in the stand, you know, hiding behind the referee, these kind of things, just to find good positions to get on the ball. And it was probably from that age that I realised that that's a position I wanted to play. I used to love just getting on the half turn, finding little pockets, and you know, being creative.
Well, that is a position we've spoke about many a times on this show, Peter included, about the number 10. Do you feel there is many number 10s about, even in the Scottish League anymore, or do you feel like the positions changed a lot? Because for me, I've seen how you play. You obviously speak about taking it on the half turn, on the back foot, and looking to create. And when you are looking to create, sometimes you might give the ball away, but you try again. Do you feel like, obviously in the Championship, is there any players similar to you would say play like that, or do you feel it's a position that's kind of fallen out of the game?
I mean, obviously different managers have different styles, different philosophies, the way they want to play. Some people don't use a 10. But obviously you could see like the likes of Falkirk obviously going on and having a really good season. You know, that's the kind of football they like to play, get their 10s and stuff on it. And to be fair, our manager started doing it as well. He's played me right in that 10 ever since he came in, and I feel like that's where I get my most success. Like you said, I think there's many like me, probably not. I could be frustrating for 8 to 9 minutes, but I know that I've just got that, you know, 1 minute of magic that I can produce to, you know, help us score a goal or create a goal or something like that. But no, I don't think there's many like me. Probably frustrating for the fans at times. But it's the way I am. I'll never change.
Well, you say frustrating for fans, but I think at the same time you're the type of player that obviously gets fans off their seat. They want to go and see something special happening. And obviously, this season your goals and assists has been fantastic. Quite a surprise actually to myself not to see you in the PFA Team of the Year for the Championship, but that's probably down to you obviously noising up rival fans, as we've seen as well this season.
Aye, probably. Like you say, I'm the kind of player I like to get fans off their seats and excite them. Obviously playing other teams, I like to rub it in as well, because fans, like I said, the player I am, you know, playing for free kicks, trying to win penalties, it's, you know, it's a
trying to win penalties.
Well, I like to draw folk in. As soon as I see dangling legs, I'll take advantage of it, and you know, fans then start getting on your case. And when I score, you know, I always go back to them and let them know that I like to get a bit back. So, like you said, it's probably hampered me. But no,
it's definitely hampered you when the boys are writing out their Team of the Year, hasn't it? Who annoyed us this year? Dylan Easton.
No, it is. It probably is. But I think probably the position that we are in the league, I think it's a position that we probably shouldn't be in. It's been a bit of an upside season in terms of stop start. So especially for myself, I kind of look at when I'm picking teams, I like to pick players who I think, you know, if without them in the team, they'd probably struggle. You know, maybe other teams or other players don't think that. They probably look at the top three and think that they've had a really good season. So, I think personally, like you say, for myself, it's been another, you know, really good season for myself.
Would you say you've kind of found a home at Raith Rovers? That's the most settled you've been in your career?
Aye, 100%. Ever since I walked in the door, and obviously leaving Niddrie, once I got myself back full time, first time full time at Niddrie, I had a really good season. Obviously winning PFA Player and stuff, so it sort of set me up. I had a few options, and you know, once Ian Murray got the Raith job, it was kind of a no-brainer. You know, the way he looked after me, I enjoyed my football, and like you said, to have that freedom to just go and express yourself, he was a big part of it. So.
Did he give you more freedom than, say, a Barry Ferguson did at Kelty? Obviously, you obviously won the league with them, and obviously Barry Ferguson, for me growing up, fantastic footballer. How would you differentiate between a Barry Ferguson at Kelty and an Ian Murray at Airdrie?
Aye,
different sides of it.
Aye, totally. I think Ian Murray was more laid back. You know, if you made a couple of mistakes, he probably wouldn't be on your case as much as Fergie would be on your case. But both amazing for, you know, their own ways, their own man management players, and especially the player I am. I love to obviously get an arm around my shoulder at times. So, I think playing under Ian Murray was a bit more, you know, laid back. Enjoyed it much more. You could make loads of mistakes, and he would still be on my case because he knew that I was, you know, capable of doing it. But Fergie just set high standards all the time.
Which isn't a bad thing as well. That kind of drives the standards from yourself as well. At the same time.
Even on the training pitch as well, he just wanted you to be at your best all the time, because
he must have seen something in you, because obviously I had friends that played at Kelty at the time, and they said, listen, we all get told to do certain things, but Dylan gets a little bit of leeway when it comes to Barry Ferguson.
Aye, I did, and like I said before, I loved him. I loved every bit of working with him, and like you say, growing up watching him, he was incredible. So I have felt lucky, and like you said, he knew the kind of player I was, so he was always on my case, setting high standards, and you know, the kind of player I am. I used to, especially in the loan league at the time, it was difficult to keep yourself standards because you're winning 8-0, 9-0, so you could switch off. But nah, he was wanting 10, 11, 12, 13. It's just the way he was, and no make mistakes. So I think learning from him's obviously put me in good stead.
Yeah, because I think having different type of managers, it definitely moulds you. I think especially the type of player you are, maybe that extra reaction maybe when you give the ball, because I've been there as well at times, and some managers get a different tune out you. They obviously come into an Ian Murray at Airdrie who gives you that freedom. You know, listen, I can make a mistake, I'm not going to get the hook here. Whereas at times in my career I knew if I wasn't doing it by 60 minutes I'm going to be off. And I think that in terms of building confidence and getting the best out of someone with that sort of skill set, I think is really important, especially now, because that position is, in terms of the player you are, you just don't see it a lot. Listen, you turned on the TV last night, you see a 17-year-old Lamine Yamal against Inter Milan.
Incredible.
The biggest stage, just gliding by guys. How do you feel when you see someone like that? Because we obviously grew up in the Ronaldo, Messi.
Even Ronaldinho and stuff as well.
Ronaldinho as well, yeah.
But like you say, 17-year-old, you just see he's playing with complete freedom, just expressing himself. And like I said before, it was just, you know, you could see even their team, like boys that have played the game long enough, they were just getting the ball as quick as they can out to him, going letting him doing his thing, and you know, he was just an absolute joy to watch. These are the kind of players that, especially for younger ones growing up, you want them to learn from him. You know, not being scared on the big stage at a young age, and I think he's going to have an incredible career. Obviously, doing
it does help when you've got guys like that passing you the ball all the time as well.
Oh, it does. You know, like probably missing in Scotland a bit. You know, these technical players, I think.
Well, listen, you obviously are coaching yourself. Right. How do you watch last night and then go and transfer that to the younger generation?
It is. It's like you just want boys being comfortable on the ball all the time. You know, like me and obviously Sean are doing our own coaching as well, and we kind of build on that, like, you know, like 1v1s, 2v2s, being brave on the ball, using it, getting as many touches as you can, because like you say, you watch that last night and he gets the ball, he's got 4 or 5 players around him and he's still thinking forward, you know, being positive and being in the areas that he thinks he can beat these players. And like you said, we're obviously trying to help younger ones to come through and, you know, maybe not be as good as Lamine Yamal, but just to have that confidence to, you know, get on the ball all the time and be brave. And
do you think our game allows for kids to be that brave, and it might not come off the first time, the second time, the third time? Or do you think in our mindset as a country is after the third time, right, just keep the ball, just keep it simple? How would you see that, obviously being a player who obviously takes risks in a game?
Aye, that's what I teach the kids as well, because it's the player I am. You know, I don't mind making mistakes. Like I said before, some managers obviously think it different, and like you said, if you make many, you're thinking about getting the hook at 60 minutes.
You're wanting the hook.
Sometimes you want it. But no, I'd say that all the time. I don't care if you make a mistake, you get the ball 10 times, 11 times, you know, keep doing the right things, because eventually you'll get better at it. It's all about being brave on the ball. And like you say, the kind of player I am, I can be terrible for 8 to 9 minutes, but if you keep doing the right things, and then, you know, it'll pay off.
I know, I think I've been in one game that kind of sticks out to me is scoring a volley under Neil Lennon against Hearts. Craig Levein, natural order game it was, and for most of the game, the guy man marking me, and I was a wee bit sloppy in the ball, and then that one moment,
even in your neck,
and everybody's writing after the game that I had some game, and I knew, because you know yourself, but it's the small details within the game are the games where you realise if you've been good or not. So say taking under pressure, coming out of it, and then keeping the ball. That's the ones where, as a player, I think, you know, you felt good, but just by one goal, the reaction to everybody else in the stadium is you've had a good game, when it actually isn't necessarily like that. Especially when I was quite critical when I did give the ball away in terms of positions where I thought I never should. And I would take that home with me, and it would kind of sit with me. In terms of you after a game, if it's maybe not gone your way, how do you cope with that? Do you just think put it under the carpet and on to the next game, or do you sometimes overanalyse, or as you've got older, have you learnt to deal with it?
That's exactly, as soon as the older I've got, I've kind of realised that when you're younger, you just think, just sweep it under the carpet. But like you said, the older I've got, you know, working under good, obviously Potsy, John Potter's played a big part of it since I've came in at Raith as well. He sits me down, you know, analyses it, goes through the bits where I could be better, you know, decision making as well. That, you know, once I get in good areas, that I could make the right choices.
Potsy's showing you how to play in the number 10.
Probably kicking the ball away a bit more. But no, he's really good at that way, and obviously the boy, you know, Mike McKenna as well, coming in as well. He's obviously doing it at Scotland as well, so working with really good players. And it's, I think since the older I've got, I've sort of took it a bit more serious. I'll go home, watch back highlights, watch bits where I, you know, get in good areas and think at myself, because you've probably been there yourself, where you, I wish I'd done that better, wish I'd done that differently. And
I do that during the game.
it's a night, even me watching games, and I'm like, even at the highest level, I'm like, why is he not doing that? And then I watch myself back and I can't really say anything because I do the same things. But no, it is, I think the older I've got, I've realised that, you know, I try and take things a bit more serious, because I've just turned 31, but I still feel that I've got so much more to give. I feel I'm the fittest I've ever felt as well. So,
do you feel as if it's took you a while, and a lot of obviously hard lessons in football's obviously led you to where you are now? Because as I say, this has been probably your most consistent in terms of numbers, the best in your career. Do you feel like the early years is a sign of frustration, or you look back and go, listen, I've learned from that and we're obviously on to the new? Or do you still have that without wishing you'd know what you know now?
no, I wouldn't change anything for what it is now, because it's made the player I am and the person I am. But, you know, my upbringing, you know, coming through Niddrie and stuff, you know, my mum and dad sort of went through difficult times as well, so it was hard. To be where I am now, obviously going through part-time, obviously I had a really bad injury at Clyde as well when I joined there, my ACL, and then through that stage I wasn't enjoying football. It was hard, I was putting on the weight, just couldn't get myself back fit, doing all the rehab stuff myself. And, you know, it's probably a boring answer, but ever since I met my missus, you know, she's played a big part in it. Since I've had my 2 young kids as well, I look up to them. Obviously having an older boy as well, who I had when I was 16 as well, so I think that was when I realised that, you know, I've got to sort of get my act together. And like I said, since I met her.
But not easy having a kid at 16 at the same time as you're trying to be a professional football player.
Aye, and it's like you say, probably the older I've got, I've realised, but when I was that age, being on £65 a week at Livy as well, which it was hard. I couldn't live, obviously, to try to bring up a young boy as well. So it kind of gave me the wake up call that I needed. Then obviously going back these part-times, doing my injuries, trying to get myself back, because I always believed in my own ability. I know I could play at the highest level. And like I said, since I met my missus, she kept me on the right track, said to me, no, listen, go back full-time and go and prove it. And once I got the call for Fergie, like Kelty, that's when, you know, after the couple of seasons, I felt like it was the right moment. He got me super, super fit, and he always said to me that he believed that I could play at the highest level. So that's when I decided to go to Airdrie, and then ever since then I've sort of kicked on, and like you said, my numbers and stuff was something I always wanted to add to my game, and I think year by year I've improved that. So aye, long may it continue.
So between obviously your partner and Barry Ferguson, in terms of on the football pitch, would you probably owe a lot to him in terms of that light bulb moment in your career where you go, listen, I've got a guy who's played at the highest level, and he believes in me in terms of ability, but I need to, the 1%ers, as we call them in football, eat right, obviously sleep right and train right. And it's difficult at times. Obviously you speak about being such a young dad, that isn't easy for anybody, especially when everything you've been gearing towards is to be a young footballer. You obviously had a time at St Johnstone as well, so even within the moments where you have a bit of life, when St Johnstone obviously want to sign you after going out to Berwick Rangers, wasn't it?
Aye.
Out to Berwick Rangers, so you then get yourself to St Johnstone. Was that an experience as well that kind of shaped you?
Aye, it was. Like you said, I always wanted to be a footballer, so having these setbacks, it only spurred me on. And like you say, obviously having a kid at a young age, I had to do the best for them. And like I said, since I met my missus and stuff, she always said that you don't want to look back when you're early 30s or whatever and going, you know, I wish I'd done that, have any regret. So since, you know, like I said, got the opportunity, like you said, I obviously owe a lot to Fergie as well. Like going there, you know, he gave me sort of the kick up the backside that I needed, and said to me that if I can get myself back fit, like you said, that eating, sleeping, all these things, looking after yourself in the right way, that I feel like I'd always, you know, go back to the top level. And it's probably the only stage in my career now that I regret is not playing at the highest level, you know, obviously the top flight. But I still feel like I've got time, like I said, so hopefully I can do that.
Yeah, I think obviously looking from afar on a team like the way Falkirk play, they've been fantastic this season. To me, who's a neutral, I think an absolute perfect fit for a side like Falkirk. I've not asked you to answer that obviously because you're at Raith Rovers, but just from the outside looking in, I think it'd be a perfect setup. In terms of the championship this year, any players really stuck out for you who think's got a real chance in the game to go to the highest level?
There's loads of players. I think you probably see it on Friday night. The championships, for me, I think it's the best league in Scotland. You know, from bottom to top, anyone can beat anyone. There has been numerous players obviously having really good seasons. Like obviously look at guys like Brad Spencer, Calvin Miller, these guys that have been nominated. Yep. It's like you said, it probably suits them because of the style of football. Yep. You know, let Falkirk play. You know, fair play to John McGlynn. He's stuck to it for, you know, many years now. Sort of kept the same squad as well, and they've all bought into it. You know, you said it before. It's great on the eye.
Aye.
It's probably everyone wants to play in teams like that where you're having a lot of ball, having joy, especially play that we are. You know, getting the half turn and try and make things happen.
Well, you think you're going to get, you think you get more chances of getting the ball in that area where you can go and hurt teams, and a team that obviously plays that.
Aye, and probably, to be fair, it's probably the most that we've had this season, the joy against Falkirk. We've obviously been their kind of bogey team, because I think a lot of teams give them a bit too much respect, which, you know, they're due it. They've done really well, but teams sit off them, give them a lot of time, and you know, could punish them. But I think, you know, especially since our new managers came in, it was.
Did you just proper go through an analysis and how you were going to set up to obviously?
Aye, it was just sort of press right for the front, right after them. Don't give them a minute, get in their faces. You know, the way Robson played is exactly the way he wants his teams to play.
He's a good player.
You know, he was, and he sets really high standards. You know, so it was leading up to the game. I think it was in the cup where it was just, you know, run through folk, you know, break the play up because once they like to get in a rhythm, Falkirk.
Well, I'm sure there was a game. It was a home game for you, and Falkirk completely changed their style of play.
Aye.
And they went long.
Aye, so
it spooked you a little bit.
Because we worked on it all week thinking that they were going to play it through the back and play their football that they have been doing for, you know, the last couple of years. But I think we, like I said, in the cup, we sort of went after them and we rattled them a wee bit and obviously beat them. And they came to our place. To be fair, they still beat us 2-0, but I don't think it was a 2-0 game. I don't think there was nothing in it, but they went, you know, 3 at the back.
It's a bit of respect to you as well.
Aye, it is, and I think that's probably credit to the manager as well, that the way he wants to play, he's came in, and I think, like I said before, it's been an upside season for us in terms of 3 different managers, stop-start, different philosophies, different style of plays, different formations, and then, you know, managers like different players, so we've not had that sort of consistent run, but I think since the managers came in, we're 10, 11 games unbeaten, and we've had that, you know, consistency. So it's probably credit to him as well.
But I'm looking at that side, and you've got obviously yourself, Lewis Stevenson, vastly experienced, great teammate. I could say the same for Paul Hanlon. Aye. So you've been at Raith for a few seasons now. Do you feel they've had an impact in terms of the club and the young players coming through for the good? Because they were great pros when I was at Hibs.
Oh, they are, and you know, you look at Lewis Stevenson, 37, never misses a training session, never misses a game. He's first, you know, in the gym, last at the gym. He's a proper pro, and like you said, I think that it's the guys that you want to be involved in. Like you say, the experience and helping younger ones, helping even myself. Like I still look up to these guys, and you know, Paul Hanlon as well. Like, he's ever since he came in, he's been a Rolls Royce. He's brilliant. Yeah. And I say that to him, he'll probably tell you I'm on his case, saying that he could still be playing at the highest level. But it's, you know, we're lucky enough to have him, and to have these guys, especially in the Championship, you need that experience to get you through these tough games.
So obviously Barry Robson, but take it back a little bit, obviously Ian Murray's like someone who you respect so much. You obviously had him at Airdrie and Raith. How was that when obviously the sacking came with him? So it was a shock to all of us. How was that as someone who obviously had a close bond with him?
It was a big surprise. I think we played Airdrie on the Saturday and we got told on the Sunday, just as quick as it happened. We never knew anything about it before. Like you said, I had a really good relationship with him. He took me in at Airdrie. Didn't start well, I got injured and stuff, but he stuck by me, stuck me straight back in, and probably had the best season ever, obviously going on and winning PFA Player of the Year and stuff. And you know, we loved it, the way you wanted to play. I think teams sort of spooked us, and like you said, having the player I was, having these players that used to man mark you, you know, was Cove obviously at the time ended up going to win the league, but I think we went 23 games unbeaten or something, never won the league, which
incredible, really.
It was mental. And we used to go and play games, and teams were starting to man mark us and trying to stop us playing, and that was down to Ian Murray. He was brilliant, and like I said about man managing players and giving them that sort of freedom to go and express themselves was amazing. And like I said, that was the big reason I joined Raith. It was all down to him. You know, we still keep in touch now as well. So it was a big surprise. It was a shock to everyone. But listen, that's football for you, and you've seen it many times. It's crazy. So I was gutted at the time.
And looking forward to next year. What's your plans? And are you looking to better this season and obviously take Raith up? I think that would obviously be the dream for a lot in there. It looks as if they've kind of. There was a few years there looking at Raith from afar where they were up and down, but it looks as if you're starting to consolidate. Obviously, the signings of Lewis Stevenson, Paul Hanlon, you obviously on form. So the striker Vaughan had some bad injuries over the years, but fantastic striker. Do you feel like Raith will look to strengthen again and make a real push for it next season?
I think so. To be fair to the manager, he's came in since the last 5-6 weeks, obviously coming to that time of the season, and he's said it to us. He's made it clear that there'll no be big changes. He's happy with what we've got here. Obviously, boys coming back, like Lewis Vaughan. I think he had his first start on Friday night, and you seen what he done, scored 2. Fortunate, I never gave him the ball for the hat trick. He was on my case, but I think taking the first penalty, the manager was on my case. I was a penalty taker all season, but for someone like him, that you say coming back for 4 ACLs, and I think that was his. I gave him the penalty because it was 14 consecutive seasons that he scored at that level, so it was a no-brainer. But to have these guys back, obviously the signings of Lewis Stevenson, Paul Hanlon, these guys, and like I said, we've managed to keep that squad for the last sort of 10-11 games, and we've went unbeaten. So hopefully we can sort of keep that momentum going into next season. I think there will be probably 2 or 3 coming in to help us. I think he's touched on that, but it won't be many changes. But it's been enjoyable.
Do you think it'll be a tough pre-season under Barry Robson? I remember when going full time at Dundee United, he was one of the fittest guys in the team. He could run.
Oh, he's training like at the time. The first couple of weeks, we used to think, Jesus, what went for here. Every training sessions can be like a pre-season. He always got his wee doggy, his runs, box to everything during that. It wasn't the case.
Every training session?
Near enough, aye. And obviously, and part of a day before a game or whatever. But
so there's always a running, even at the latter stage of the season?
We'd be off a Thursday, and then Friday would be your just usual Friday shape and stuff. But Monday to Wednesdays.
Tough.
It is tough, but it's, we're seeing the rewards for it. Even doing boxes to start with, whatever we possession things, it's not the case of walking in and getting a drink. He wants you jogging.
Yeah.
Lazy teams walk, he says. So, and I think boys are buying into it now. And like I said, we've sort of showed that consistency the last 10 games, and I think it's a big credit to him. The way he wants to play. Boys are, like I said, buying into it.
Well, I think obviously looking at going for the playoffs, you were from everybody was expecting Livingston and our very own Ryan McGowan, obviously.
Aye.
Didn't manage to help you out in that one, but listen, obviously going for it and that consistent run of form, that's a sign of things to come. I think obviously a lot of Raith Rovers fans watching will feel that the team's moving in the right direction now.
Aye, totally. Like you said, we went to Queen's Park on the Friday night, hoping Livy could do us a favour. I think obviously going for the league. I think we had to win by 4 goals, and we had done our part, so it was a case every goal that we celebrated, we were looking at the fans, looking for a reaction. And
could you hear?
Well, we heard a few roars, so it was like, surely they've scored, and we're looking over. I think you can see, I think one of the Partick Thistle fans tagged me in a tweet and saying, oh look, you can see Dylan's reaction looking for a goal in the game. But no, like you said, we'd done our part in it. We put ourselves in a really good position to go 10 games unbeaten. Like I said, for the season, we had constant changeovers and a lot of stuff going on behind the scenes. But to be fair, before the last 2 games, we never expected Thistle to go and beat Falkirk and Livy, so you've got to give them a little bit of respect as well. Obviously, Brian Graham taking over there.
Did you watch the game last night?
I did, and I think that hurts you more when you get that close and you watch it and you go, wish I'd been part of it. But nah, it was obviously tough to watch, but I watched it, and I'll be watching the second leg as well.
Who do you see as favourites to go up and play against the Premiership side?
I think probably looking at last night, I think you'd probably favour Ayr now going to Ayr. I think they're very good at home. We've played them a few times this season. They've given us a bit of a doing as well on their pitch at their place, that stadium. They make a good atmosphere and stuff. But I wouldn't write Thistle off. I think ever since Graham's came in, they've been picking up really good results. But it's only half time. They'll be looking at just as a normal day, just go and win the game and see where it takes them. But
do you feel either of them could go by Livingston?
I think so. I think, like I said, it's from bottom to top in the Championship. Anyone could be in on their day. You know, obviously, Livy have got a really good team, really good experienced manager as well. Who's probably
good experience in the right areas of the pitch.
Aye, right through the spine. I think that's what's helped them throughout. You could see, like, obviously the boys like McGowan and stuff, having boys like them, like Paul Hanlon, Stevenson,
Danny Wilson.
Danny Wilson. These guys help you, right along, and I think you've got to build that in the Championship to have that experience. So I think there'll be close games. I don't think either team will run away with it. You'll see it every single week. It's no 4-5-0 ever. It's always close games. So
I do love the playoffs myself. I do like it. I know you'd rather be playing in it, but from watching it, it does make it more exciting come that end of the season.
It does, and I think, like I said, we had real good momentum, going obviously 10 games unbeaten. So I think, I wouldn't say teams feared us, but I think we would have went in there with a lot of confidence. Look at Ayr.
Scoring goals as well.
Totally, aye. Then I think you look at Ayr, for instance, yesterday. I know they won, but they were on a run of bad form and stuff, so it can change quickly. But I think the sort of headlight was off as people sort of wrote us off a while ago, and it was just gutting to see on Friday, obviously winning our game by 4 goals and seeing Thistle win there. But whoever it is, I think I wish them all the best going forward.
I'm sure you really mean that.
Deep down, I'm gutted, to be honest. But like you say, watching it, it's hard to watch, just being that close. And I think, like you say, being the confident team, I think we had built real good momentum, and especially myself as well.
You all wanted more goals?
Exactly, and I wanted more games to try and push the club.
You want the games that are on TV and that to obviously showcase your talent. Listen, we'll finish some quick fire questions.
Aye.
See how you got on with this. Who was your boyhood hero growing up?
I touched on with Ronaldinho.
Ronaldinho.
He was
any specific moments of Ronaldinho that, to me, the outside of the boot goal against Chelsea,
edge of the box,
incredible.
That's the one that stands out. He does his wee dance and just, it was incredible. Watching him growing up, he used to try and mirror and go down out in the street against the wall and just try and practice everything he'd done. He was incredible. Favourite memory going to football? Probably early days, even school football and that. I used to love playing school football, playing with your mates. They were probably the early days that I think school football was taken out now. I don't see, especially for my kids and stuff, I don't think school football's a thing anymore. I used to love it. They were the early days. Loved school football. It used to be the highlight of the week where you used to hate school all week. And then you obviously have the games on a Friday or whatever. So. And obviously you were well behaved at school, so I took the football away from you, because I used to try and do that in my school with some people. Because we weren't allowed to play with the school. Obviously I was at Dundee United from the age of 9. I was there, and that was one of the main things. You weren't allowed to play for your school, but when you obviously didn't have a training night, you'd do the sneaky and you'd end up playing, and loved it. Obviously, getting to play with your friends as you spoke about there. It was a highlight. Obviously, I wasn't great at school. It used to come with when you used to. It was kind of what they used to use against me if you misbehaved for the week. You're not playing for the school football. Yeah. And then the school manager knows he needs you for the school game. Totally, and to be fair, I've still got a good relationship with my school teachers as well, and they came to a few of my games, who was the teacher at the time.
I love that.
No, they were definitely the highlights growing up. Best player you've played with and against? Played with. Something that probably the last couple of years that you didn't really sit back and think about it. I think the levels of going up, like there was a boy that we played with last year that, Sam Stanton. Yep. He was, this season he was one of the guys that looked effortless, like he just used to glide, and I think playing with him in training, there's things he used to do, you couldn't get the ball from him. Mm-hmm. Like he had the gangly legs as well. If he overtouched it, he'd find a way of getting out. He was a big part of our success last season. So I think there's loads of other boys that have played it, like Callum Higginbotham and stuff at Kelty, all these guys that have had a good career, which I used to love playing with them. Even Tids, at Kelty, used to find me on the 10, his left foot was a 1, but there's loads of good players I've played with, but he's...
So I'm stand out
just
for you?
more recently, he's definitely one that stands out. Best I've played against, like I said, it's something that I wish I'd done when I was younger, and I still feel like I've got down to playing at the highest level. So, you know, going on the Scottish Cup runs and playing against like James Tavernier and stuff when I did, playing off the left-hand side last year.
How was that?
It was good. It was a great experience. You probably realise, like, when you play the games, I feel that, you know, without sounding big-headed, but I feel like that's the stage that I belong on.
You're allowed to feel like that.
Like, I feel I can express myself, and playing against better players probably brings the best out of me as well. So it was amazing. Playing against obviously Rangers captain and stuff, and being a Celtic fan growing up, I wanted to get stuck in, but nah, that was...
Celtic fan for Niddrie, is that common?
Nah, it wasn't. It was, to be fair, it was my whole family growing up just got me into Celtic, and it's just stuck with me ever since. And it was getting his top after the game Tavernier as well. My Celtic family wanted to happen.
No, but you can respect, obviously, the career he's had and how much a fantastic player he has been for Rangers. If you weren't a footballer, what do you think you would have been?
Probably my mates would tell me, probably in jail or something like that. I think something that I've got
Coaching?
into a lot more. Coaching. I think being part of that the last 5-6 years, I love coaching. I love the buzz of it. It's amazing. You know, it's probably the highlight of my week when I go in and look forward to going coaching. So,
Do you think that's because of the experiences you've had, you kind of want to give that back to the younger kids and maybe give them the guidance that maybe you didn't have at the same age?
And I've had a lot of people through when I was younger, like, sort of kept me off the streets, like I said, put me in the right direction. And like I said, I think Kirkcaldy was missing that, so it was something that me and Shawnee wanted to do, is to try and, you know, like you said, try and get people off the streets and guide them and put them in the right direction, because I think there's sort of a platform for them to go on. And like I say, hopefully one day they look up to us as idols, and we could try and get them on it, you know, playing for Raith Rovers and stuff.
Do you coach on the pitch?
We coach on the pitch as well, so it's a big credit. We do it through, obviously, the help.
Brilliant, no overheads then.
It's a big help for the boys that run the community as well, like, you know, JJ and Cammy and stuff, and obviously Potsy, you know, they've given us, like you said, the stadium and stuff, all the equipment that we can go and enjoy doing it. So without them, it wouldn't have been possible.
No, but I think even for the kids, obviously in Kirkcaldy they've got 2 current players, which isn't something you always get.
No.
And at the same time you're getting the experience of getting coached in the stadium off the players.
It's something that I wish I'd done when I was
amazing,
younger. You know, imagine being coached off players that you look up to, coaches, players that you idolise. It would, you know, it's a dream come true for most of them. You can see it, you know, in their faces when they come, and, you know, even the parents speaking, saying that it's the highlight of their week, coming in and getting coached with players that they come and watch week in, week out.
That's what it's all about.
8 to 9 minutes of the game, probably boom, you know, my face. But no, it's the highlight in my week. I love coaching.
No, I love that. Travelling in a car across America, pick 3 legends from life, living or dead, that you would take in the car with you. So celebrity, music, footballer, comedian.
You'd have to have somebody funny. Hart, what's his name?
Kevin Hart.
Kevin Hart. Oh, love him. He's hilarious. You'd have to have him in. Footballer, probably growing up, Ronaldo.
Love to just likes a party as well, don't he?
Just love to see what his experience was growing up and the things that he did as footballer. Someone else, probably someone like Tiger Woods or something.
Tiger Woods.
Or Conor McGregor.
Also likes a party. Also likes a party.
Just someone that's that would just
personality.
Totally. Conor McGregor. I'd have.
Pick one song you never get tired of listening to.
It's going to sound a bit cringy, but
It's easier the better.
the one on a Saturday when I score, like, see my family and my kids and that being there and watching the whole South Stand singing my song, it's the best feeling of football, singing. I don't know if you've heard that, I don't know what I sing it like.
You're going to sing it for us?
Dylan Easton put on our show. Everywhere we go. But no, it's incredible, and I've been lucky enough to hear it quite a lot this season, so you can see it in my kids' faces. Even my youngest daughter, she's only 4, and you can see her dancing about how you're singing my song. It's the best feeling in the world.
Nice.
Like I said, growing up, sort of having the childhood I have, I wanted my kids to have the best life, and seeing them doing that, it's special.
Yeah, really special moments, no denying that. Your favourite movie?
Ooh. I love the Home Alones and that.
Oh, me
Like,
too.
I
Me
can't
too.
get-
One or two.
Two.
Two,
New
I
York.
would
Aye,
take two, New York.
It's the best. Like,
That's the one as a kid that makes you want to go to New York, that film, doesn't it?
incredible. And I've never been to New York. It's kind of my missus has been there, so I think it's something that we'd love to do. But we didn't really watch much movies, to be fair. But like I said, pardon me, having the kids and that, you watch these movies all throughout Christmas, and even throughout Christmas, we watched that one about 6 times. Jack Frost.
Jack Frost, yeah.
And I'm not
Brilliant.
shed a few tears, like, but
You went for 2 Christmas films, I like that.
it's probably the only time I get to watch movies,
Yeah.
because it's where the kids want to watch movies. Like I said, we didn't really watch films, so Home Alone was my favourite.
Who would play you in a movie?
Who would play me? Oh, you've put me on the spot here, Scotty. I can't even think.
Got the curtains rocking a bit now.
I don't know. What do you think?
We'll go Brad Pitt.
You got Brad
A wee
Pitt?
bit Brad Pitt. Nearly Mel Gibson.
Maybe.
Who's your favourite actor?
To be fair, like I said, I didn't really watch much movies.
You a box set guy or just too busy?
Too busy, mate.
Too busy coaching.
Too busy.
Kids.
And my missus as well, she's mentally busy as well, so by the time we put the kids down, I'm knackered, ready to go to bed. I like the guy, to be fair, I like the boy, Step Brothers, Brendan. He's right up there. I watched that the other day, so that's kind of the one that sticks at the top of my head.
Best holiday with your teammates?
Someone I've never actually been on, properly.
I haven't,
been on a team holiday, no. Again, there's one that probably stands out when Fergie took over at Clyde. He took us on a pre-season tour to Jersey.
Yeah, I've heard this one before. Is that the one where the plane was cancelled?
Aye,
Yeah.
and they bought a private jet.
They bought a private.
But no, that's probably the one that sticks at the top of my head. It was an unbelievable experience. It was my first experience to go away with, especially with a team that I felt part of, where I was playing first team.
So how did that look? You turn up to the airport, the flight gets cancelled, and then Fergie says, "Well, don't worry, boys, I'll sort it."
Pretty much. We were sitting there, and I think they came over, because I think at the time it was just one flight in, one flight out at Jersey. So they came over and said that the next flight would be like the next game morning, first thing, and Fergie went, "Nah, I'm not having that." He was like, "I've got a game tomorrow that to prepare for." He was like that. He had everything set that he wanted to just. So I think he ended up pulling one of them over and said, "It's an any private jet's going." So
How many were there?
it was a full team, and there was staff, there was people for the board as well, which was coming as well. So I think a couple of hours later we were on a private jet flying it to Jersey.
I think that says a lot about Barry Ferguson as well. At the same time,
Aye.
I think his boys are probably he proper cares about us.
Aye, he did, and I think that's when I, like I said, realised that was the first time he worked under him. I looked up to him and thinking, you know, he put a lot into the boys. Like, not many people would do that. It was a case of just sleeping over and getting away, but to be fair,
No, I'd have been back up the road.
But no, he put a lot into the boys. He was, like I said, a big, massive part of, you know, where I am now. So, I've got to thank him a lot.
Yeah, I think that's a nice one to finish on. Listen, thanks for watching, and a big thanks to our guest Dylan Easton, and we wish him the best of luck.